This week, we address de-risking risk, and we will kind of not rediscover. I don't want to reiterate is the word that's in there, and I didn't think I was going to be able to say it, but I said it, so we'll reiterate. There, I said it twice. The message of what the show is about: innovation and business and success in security. In the startup articles and discussion, we cover GE's new CEO communication techniques, 10 tools to streamline your sales process, high-performance teams, and the psychology behind them, our 6 must-reads if you're a startup with 30-plus people, and why cash conversion cycle matters. Also, we'll cover some startup notes of interest as well. So stay tuned for this edition of Startup Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show about security startups, how to secure your startup, and advice for security startups. It's Startup Security Weekly.
I need it from the top.
Brought to you by IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team's skills up to date. IT Pro TV's team solution provides group pricing and access to their supervisor portal. You'll gain full control over your team's training schedule, see individual and group analytics, and more. IT Pro TV does IT live every day, so you know you're getting the most current IT training. Go to itpro.tv/startup security and use the code SS30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Gain control of cyber risk with Tenable.io, the first vulnerability management platform built for today's elastic assets like cloud, containers, and web apps. Discover a fresh, asset-based approach that prioritizes vulnerabilities while seamlessly integrating into your environment. And improve ROI with the first elastic licensing approach based on assets, not IP addresses. Tenable.io delivers the data and context you need to secure your elastic attack surface. Start your free Tenable.io trial today by visiting Tenable.io. Welcome to Startup Security Weekly. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian. This is August 25th, 2017. And we're doing episode 52. That's right. On the lines via Skype is none other than the beach bum himself, Mr. Michael Santarcangelo. Michael, welcome to the program.
Welcome. No, thank you. It's good to be here. I never remember how to do that.
I really like that.
I don't have to say reiterate, so it's good.
That's good. I like how our walls are the same color. It looks like we're in the same studio, just not sitting next to each other.
You know what I got to do? I got to get some of that wavy stuff behind you, and then kind of have like some lights going. I'll work on it. Yeah. I've been slowly streamlining the office. So I'll get a parts list and give me a week or two. You notice I got rid of the picture of myself behind me.
I noticed that.
I take feedback well.
We were going to put a picture of me behind me just in mockery of you.
We should have done that. Look, it's the first time I had like a picture of me on a board, and they're like, "Do you want to take it home with you?" I was like, "Hell yes, I do." And now it's like dart practice for the kids or something. So.
Want to mention itpro.tv. Go to itpro.tv/startup security. Use the code SS30. It's free for 7 days, and you get 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. You can sign up for the supervisor portal. That's right. Your company can buy training for you and help you manage it, all with IT Pro TV's supervisor portal. Make sure you check that out, as well as SANS Pentest Hackfest Summit, November 13th through the 20th. There's 2 days of talks. There's 3 nights of Net Wars with Coinapalooza, 1 night of Cyber City missions, and a super secret challenge, alongside 9 courses taught by top pen testing course authors and instructors. The summit, the 2 days of talks, will be happening November 13th through the 14th and is led by SANS fellow and friend of the show, Mr. Ed Scotus. I'll be there presenting how to defend against penetration testers and win. That's right, at a pen test conference. Should be interesting. Register at sans.org/Hackfest17. Use the discount code Hackfest17. Save $300 off the 2-day Hackfest Summit. Alrighty. Michael, we don't have a guest for the show, but you and I we're gonna talk about stuff and things like de-risking risk. and hopefully
We're gonna
not use the
reiterate.
word reiterate.
Yeah,
Reiterate.
because one of us is gonna get it wrong one of these times. Yeah, it's we as we got going, and we've been building out a good catalog of people to come on the program. But we're at a year. We a little over a year, right? Facebook told us a couple weeks ago we're at a year. It's episode 52, and so it gives us you and I have off camera obviously taken some time to say, hey, how are we doing? How's the show going? What do we like, and where are we going with it? And it gave us a chance to kind of compare notes about the way that people have been approaching us when we started out. And I'm curious, how you think about this, but I'll start this way. When you and I first started talking about this program, we instantly, I'll say for me at least, I instantly looked at it and said, here's an opportunity to look at something from a couple different perspectives. Now, those of you that pay attention to stuff I do with Straight Talk know that perspective switching is important. The reason is it gets you a more complete picture. So I didn't want to just look at startups in one capacity. I wanted to say, okay, what's it like to get funded? What's the money side of it look like? What are the different avenues to it, and what goes into those decisions, if anything? And then we started, of course, looking at the startup side of it. Like, what's it like to actually be a startup? And the feedback we've gotten has been great, because there's people that want to know what it's like to be a product startup versus a services startup. We've talked to a bunch of founders in the past year that have done hybrid, and they're trying to do both at the same time. And then we've talked to a number of people, and I don't know if we've done deep enough dive on this, but a lot of people said, hey, I want to do lifestyle stuff. Like, I kind of want to run my own shop because I don't want to work Fridays in the summer, or I don't want to work in a cubicle farm, and I'm thinking about branching out on my own. What would that be like? And that's given us an opportunity to really look at starting up in a lot of different capacities. The third thing then that we started with was to say, well, we have the enterprise security leaders. These are the buyers. These are the innovators. These are the early adopters. They're looking for solutions. They're looking for something to help them solve the problems that they've got, and they want to see what's out there. As we've gone through the year, what I've realized too is, and this is based on a lot of the feedback, a lot of you are on the same journey that Paul and I are on. You're maybe a first-time leader. Maybe you're not a first-time leader, but you've got a different team. Clearly, the mission of security has changed in the last couple of years. And these same principles around how you build your team, how you explain what you do to people, how you start and launch a minimum viable product and build yourself up and build the rapport and get the funding you need, right? Getting those internal investments. It's the same stuff. Some of the words might be a little bit different, but it's the same stuff. And so that gave you and I a chance over the last week or so to say, hey, how are we doing? And I think, at least on our account, but my take on it is it's good to kind of stop for a second and say, there's something for everybody in this program, because we get to cover a lot of those things, but we're really looking at it from a business angle, not just a technology angle. But that's, I don't know, how do you explain it to people, or how do you think about what we've done so far?
Yeah, I really think it's, it's two things, maybe three. I think first and foremost, the innovation is really important, and I love that we're continuing to highlight innovation in our field, and people that want to learn about the innovations that are happening in security can tune into this program, and Michael and I will do our best to cover it. When I tell people I cover the security vendor space, and there's over 500, some say 1,000 different companies providing solutions in this space, and the market potential that exists there, the buyer is just dizzying. It's dizzying to have all of those choices. So I like that we're able to help with that. I also like the business focus as well, and that takes on a lot of different shapes and forms, and it certainly helped me in framing a lot of discussions that it's not that you don't necessarily want to create a startup and go solve a problem and go down that path and be an entrepreneur. That might, and if you listen to the show, you're going to get some great tips on how to do that and how to do that well. But also just framing it in other conversations you have with people, whether it be, for me, whether it be a briefing, whether it's our own business here, our own startup here, working within teams, like that message is just important. I think especially in security, we talk about people getting to the field, what you need to know, what you need to do. Those communication lessons are important. And I think understanding the problem you're trying to solve is probably still the thing that is most often missed. I take briefings, as I said, and when I ask people, so what's the problem you want to solve? And they're like, oh, I just want to learn like about something. I'm like, well, if you don't have a goal or problem you're trying to solve, then what do you want to know about then? Then there's no point in me talking about something that you can't just like go read, I guess. But you need those goals and that problem to be clearly defined, whether you're a product vendor company or whether you're someone that needs to learn about solutions. You have to define that problem. Otherwise, the message is lost. I think we've
Yeah, I mean, think about that, right? Yeah, we have, and you said something that's also really benefited me in that talking to people about their companies, as much as you and I think we know, what I've really enjoyed is listening to the stories. And what's kind of interesting, right? We haven't really done any sort of behind the scenes. We prepare for the program. You and I talk. I mean, obviously, it's funny. Some people think like you and I must just hang out and talk all day, and I wish we could, but we're both busy. And so there's a lot of times like it's 3 minutes before we go, and we're like, hey, how are you? Good. All right, how are you? What's up? And sometimes we could take a couple minutes after the show, but we do trade emails back and forth. We try to hop on calls when we can. We send ideas back and forth, and we do think about the way the program is going to work. And a lot of times, too, our guests, we prep the guests ahead of time. Now, when people say that, it's the thing that's interesting about this program, and one of the things I really like about the way you and I do this and with the way we interact is it's not scripted. You and I don't necessarily have, and we have in the past, we've had a list of questions we tried to ask people. But what we really find is we want the story. And you and I ask very insightful, complimentary questions. In fact, there's times now that I've noticed I'm like, oh, I'm asking the Paul question.
Yeah,
like,
sometimes
oh,
like,
look,
I'm asking
Paul
the
asked the question I was going to. Yeah. but so as we go through it, as we think about those things, what's been interesting to me is I start to hear the trends. And it's really helped me kind of come back to my business and say, whoa, hold on, I got to focus. I got to narrow down. I'm trying to do too much stuff. I mean, even just yesterday, so you and I did have a conversation yesterday, and in the middle of talking with you about stuff we were doing on the program, I went, I get it now. I see what I do. I can do those things. That's not what I enjoy. I'm good at this. So what's been great about that then is like today we're going to talk a little about de-risking risk. But if you think about just what problem you're trying to solve, right? And it's still, I tell you, the companies I've worked with this year and the people I've coached, it's still a challenge for people. Like it takes time. You've got to really work through that. The thing is, if you're an investor, you've got to then figure out, and right, and we've talked to investors. Are you investing in a portfolio? Are you looking for the unicorns? Are you looking to be able to make an impact? Are you investing in things that you understand, or have you built up a network? Why would somebody take your investment? What do they get as a return on that? There's a lot of questions in that people don't necessarily think about. Well, same thing on the buy side. Nope, not the buy side per se, but like the buyer's side. You're enterprise security leader. Okay, well, why would you work with that startup? What's the problem that you're trying to solve? Are you trying to advance the community? Are you trying to help the industry? Do you like the startup people? Do you want to be part of that mentality? Do they really have a novel solution to a problem that you know that you have? And is this a way that you can get the benefit and they can get the benefit too? Well, that's awesome. Well, same thing then if you're a startup. What is your focus? What is it that you're trying to do and why, and how does that work, and how are you getting that? And so it's been neat to keep looking at those. And where I've been pleasantly surprised over the course of the last year is how effectively it overlaps, but then how much misinformation there is in each of those circles. So I want to make sure as we keep doing this, we break that down and we work our way into that. And you and I were talking too. And there's enough shows now. Like I have to make a concentrated effort, maybe by the end of this year, to try to be a guest on each of the programs. Like maybe, yeah, like I get like a special badge for it or something. But I think that'd be fun. But what I love about the platform that you've built, Paul, is there's really something for everybody. And one of our guests on this program a couple of weeks ago talked about, there's a security community and there's a security industry. And what I really see that you've done is you're bridging both. Mm-hmm. You're saying, look, there's a community and we're part of it, and let's have that conversation and be part of it. There's also an industry. Let's go look at what's good for the industry. And, it's like when we get the chance to talk with John, like I love that radical candor and just calling it the way it is. Like, I think that's absolutely fantastic. And it's so needed in this industry. And, and we're taking a much closer look at the business side of stuff and asking people questions. I mean, you and I have talked before, like when you say to somebody, okay, well, what's your acquisition cost? And they're like, I don't know. What's the lifetime value of a customer? I don't know. Okay, well, how are you going to measure the return on this? I don't know. No, guys, in the industry, we got
to know that stuff. Right. And I think it's really started for me, Michael, when you started coming on the Paul Security Weekly show and started asking, what problem you're trying to solve, and I was like, wow, that was really like the fundamental element to what we did, and then to what I've learned rather, and how we've built on that, right? And then next week, I think we're going to talk about play bigger and creating categories. And wow,
Can't wait.
like if I didn't understand the problem aspect of it, I don't think I would have gotten as much out of listening to that book. And now I'm like, wow, there's like a whole other dimension that I can build on top of those problems and solutions, right? I mean, because you got to have a problem that you solve. You have to actually solve it. But like the missing piece in that puzzle that we're going to talk about next week was you got to have a category. Not only that, you got to own that category. You have to create and own.
Yeah, if you
that
leave it to
category.
somebody else.
Yeah.
If you leave it to somebody else, you're not going to like it the way that it works. By the way, if you're listening right now and you say, "Well, no, I mean, hold on, but I'm an investor." Yeah, you know what we're seeing this year? We're seeing branded funds. We're seeing funds that are partnering with established security companies. We're seeing funds that are recruiting security people to be part of the funds. We're seeing funds that are trying to distinguish themselves and create new categories for investing based on what they do. They're following the exact same playbook. Now go back to the enterprise. Are you the security team of old? Are you, is it your father's Oldsmobile, or are you something new? Are you the one that always tell people no? Are you the ones that don't show up to the meetings? Are you the ones that are just throwing shade on everything? Well, fantastic. Or are you looking at it to say there's a limited amount of time, there's a limited amount of funds, there's a limited amount of resources. I need to go focus on what's there the most. And are you becoming a different category in the organization? Mm-hmm. So no, that what's great is how much that plays. I'll tell you, there's a lot of goodness in the book. To give people a preview if they haven't read it yet, because we're going to talk about it more, and we're going to have to see if we can get Chris on the show.
Yeah, we absolutely have to get one of the authors, if not all three, of that team on the show, because I talked about the team quite a bit in the beginning of the book, especially.
Yeah, and think about the relationship that they have and the way that works. And so what's neat about it is one of the phrases in there that I really love is you need to fall in love with the problem publicly. And I think what we see a lot of times in technology specifically, and by the way, this is in the enterprise just as much, is we're really quick on features and benefits. Like, here's the solution, here's the feature, here's the benefit, boom, boom, boom. You should buy me because we're really awesome, because this is what we do. And what happens is when you fall in love with the problem, you're actually demonstrating to the marketplace, to your colleagues even, that you understand what's going on. In fact, you understand it better than they do. They're learning from you. They get excited about it. And that's why what I love about this, and we talked about this in the last program, is that, so you take play bigger, and then you go into the brain audit. And the brain audit really shows you how to connect with that. And then you get into never split the difference. And that's showing you how to negotiate that value at the one-to-one. So you go in category big, down to the people I'm trying to help, down to, okay, I'm having a conversation with this person. And I'm in the process of going back through all that myself from a business perspective. And it's fascinating. But what I've also learned about my practice, it's interesting. I started out this year thinking I was going to focus almost exclusively. Like I said, all right, I'm going to pick a niche. I'm going to go with early stage security startups. Like, kind of makes sense, right? We're talking about it every week. They need straight talk. They need to be able to translate their value prop into understanding, and in a way that somebody can carry it forward. So it doesn't matter where in the organization you got the foothold. They need to be able to carry your story forward in a successful and productive way. And by the way, I've done that, and I love those companies that I'm working with, and they're fantastic. But actually, I think to a certain extent, Paul, because of the work we've been doing here, I've had a number of enterprises reach out to me and say, hey, do you work with us too? And I have. And in fact, what they've pushed me to do is shorten the model. So we're doing a little bit more workshop based. I've changed up some of the coaching and ways that we can do it. So it's both. It's better for everybody. I'll say that way for now. And so what's neat then is that's really pushed me to look at how each of these things works differently. But OPS then, the same concepts apply, like creating the category, being able to fall in love with the problem, being able to explain to people in your organization why that's a problem in a way that they go, oh, I get it. Okay, well, I want a solution. What's the solution? How do I help? As opposed to coming and saying, we're security, this is bad, you're stupid, we're really smart, this is how it's going to work, right? So what's really kind of cool is a lot of the stuff that we're doing is definitely about innovation. It's definitely about business. And if you're interested in leadership, paying attention to the stuff that we're doing is absolutely going to advance you. But that's it too. We love the feedback. And I can tell you, everybody who reaches out to me, I respond. If I see you on Twitter, we respond. If it's on Facebook, we respond. There's a lot of stuff there that we like. Please keep that coming. Tell us the people that you'd like to see. And I'm sure Paul and I can come up with it. But if you're one of those enterprise CISOs, you're an enterprise security leader, and you like innovation, Personally, I'd love to have a chat with you. I'd love to learn a little bit more about some of the things you're looking for, some of the questions you'd like to answer, maybe even some of the companies you'd like to go after. There's like some 2,000 security startups right now that we can track through things like Crunchbase and Owler and everything else. Who do you want us to focus on? Who would you like us to talk to? And we'll go after some of that type of stuff. So
awesome.
at least those are some of my thoughts. So let's talk for a minute then about just de-risking risk, because I always think it's interesting, because in security, we know about risk, except for what I'm quick to point out to people is what we know about is the downside of risk. There's an upside of risk, right? If you take a risk is about uncertainty. And so if you take a risk, the uncertainty says you might get a reward from that, or you might be penalized from that. In security, we're very focused on the downside of risk, as in, whoa, if you do that, that's too much risk, and here's all the bad things that can happen. So what happens is there's this concept of de-risking. Now, you can de-risk, right, a financial portfolio. In fact, if you just go do a search on de-risk, well, a ton of stuff comes up. And there's a lot of consumer-oriented stuff that comes up because the different banks and the investment houses and the retirement houses want you to understand how they are de-risking your investment, which means they're not putting as much at risk. They're looking at it and they're saying, hey, we understand what's happening. So we've talked about this a little bit as we go through some of these types of things. And I pulled up a couple of resources. I'll stick them in the show notes. And there's one, I actually feel like we definitely talked about this because it talks about that there's a risk spectrum from something that's high risk to low risk. Now, they call it a spectrum. I'm quick to point out to people, I think it's much more of a curve than it is a continuum. So spectrums are okay. Just keep it a little curvy and you'll be good to go. And so what you start to find is there's things, there's a difference between what you think, what you know, and what you're able to show people. And so it has a couple high-level principles. And this first one, I think, is actually, these three are really good. Doesn't matter whether you're a startup going for funding, you're a startup trying to win some of your early sales and get some of that initial traction, you're an enterprise security leader, and you're either trying to get a startup into your organization or you're just trying to get some funding. You're trying to demonstrate you need something. Here's three basic principles. 1, showing is better than telling. 2, external validation is stronger than your personal opinion. 3, more data is better. What we resort to a lot of times, especially in security, is we just explain stuff. Well, we think we do. We're still using jargon. We're using concepts that maybe have a lot of different definitions to them. And so what happens is we're not really showing people how it works. What I've learned every time is if we can sit with now, takes more effort. We can show them. We can show them what it looks like. We can involve them in the process. I'll give you 2 examples. In the past, in fact, this is one I tested. We told people how to choose better passwords. And then we measured how many of them actually went and changed their passwords to that spec. And it was dismal, like 10%. Took another group and we brought them in. It was like a half hour. We created a competition at the end to see who could come up with the best password. In fact, what we learned in the first iteration was we had to cap it at 32 characters. Now, keep in mind, these are people who, when they come in, say they hate passwords, they have too many, this is too arcane, it doesn't make any sense at all. And 8 characters, right? Oh, don't even ask me for 8 characters. You guys are nuts. 25 minutes later, we have to cap them at 32 characters because they've all figured it out and it all works. Well, we measured that group. Like 90% of them went and changed, like within 2 hours. And we couldn't crack them. Like they were great. They totally got it. Because we showed them. We didn't tell them. We showed them. Same thing if you're in a hospital. If you go to a group of people, right? So a hospital is where I've done this. And they said, okay, well, we asked the doctors what kind of authentication they wanted, and they said none. Is that how you asked them? Yes. Well, if you ask me that question, I'm going to say the exact same thing.
Right.
Did you show them 3 options and let them try it out and see which one worked? Did you actually go study their workflow and see how? Oh, we didn't think about that. Right. Okay, well, let's do that. We did that. Suddenly the doctors are saying, whoa, hold on, I could do this. Or what about this? Or I thought, yeah, because they understood it now. So they got it. That's the external validation too. So you can come along and say, well, I'm the expert. I like it. This is good. It's a good choice. Should totally do that. Okay. But better is, right, we call that the social proof. But this is why people subscribe to Gartner. This is why people take a look at the reports. This is why, folks want to get published with me on CSO because it's external validation. It's social proof. What's better than social proof? Actually having somebody test it with some level of methodology to it that you could reproduce and say, oh, they knew what they were doing. That's much better. You can do that internally as well. You can bring those resources in. You can work that stuff out. And then, more data is more better. And that data can be different things. I think it'll work this way. Okay, we've done this number of times, right? It's your track record. Okay, we've done it this number of times, and this is why we know it's going to work. Oh, so much better. So just from those level of things, or thinking about stuff differently, it makes such a difference. Thoughts on those, Paul?
No, I think it's all great. I agree with everything that you said there. I don't think at this time I have much to add to that.
Yeah, it's just some of those principles. Because the thing about it is, we look at it and say, well, we're here. I mean, we're supposed to be all about risk, and it doesn't matter, right? You could say, I'm a security startup, and so therefore I'm helping you solve a security problem, so I don't have risk. No, you have risk. I mean, think about this for a second. It doesn't matter to me the role that you're in. You're talking to somebody. In fact, a lot of people who don't have experience in the financial sector will say, well, it's my job to go pitch the VCs all the time. Like they're not looking for me. No, they are looking. They're inundated. They're overwhelmed, but ultimately they've got to make a decision, right? So they're trying to figure out, are you risky or not for them, right? So everybody's taking a look at risk. Now, we look at risk in terms of personal risk. You can look at it in terms of technical risk. You can take a look at it in terms of financial risk. So if I'm in the enterprise and you're coming to me and you want me to write you a check, one of the questions I love asking people in the enterprise is what's the risk tolerance in your organization? Are you guys willing to make a $5,000 bet, $25,000 bet, $50,000 bet, $100,000 bet? Now, I've come across all of those numbers. What I find pretty characteristically is most organizations will try something new if it's $25,000 or less. Some will do it at 50. So if you've got a product and you're really excited and you're like, well, it's at least $100,000. Okay, well then you've got more risk. You can get it, but you've got to do more to de-risk it. You've got to show them it's less of a risk. If you get more into their comfort zone where they're willing to try something, you know that they're willing to risk up to $25,000. They might say, we're comfortable at $15,000 and a 90-day period, and we'll see how that works. Okay, cool. Well, so what happens then is that when you start to understand that, you can do things that de-risk it. The other thing is, if you've ever heard the phrase, and we've changed it over the years. It used to be, I think it originated as no one gets fired for buying IBM. Mm-hmm. And then over years, we said for Symantec, for Cisco, for whatever else. Yeah. So what we're saying there is they're established, right? This is why people go to the big four. This is why we still use some of the analysts and vendors and stuff that we do. They've established themselves in the marketplace. They're not considered risky. And therefore, if you choose them, if something blows up, it's on them. It wasn't you. You did what everybody else did, right?
Mike, what you said, especially earlier, in terms of de-risking the risk, I often think that people search for a solution, right? And they don't want to put the work in internally to maximize that solution to solve the problem that causes less risk. And like what you described, like no one gets fired for buying IBM. A lot of people want to go buy things, but what I heard you just saying is there's a lot of things that you can do, maybe with some tools as well, to reduce your risk in your organization. But that takes some work, right? Some of that work starts with maybe thinking about the problem differently, as you described in the password example. I thought about the problem differently. Now, what I believe minimized that organization's risk the most was not buying tools, but just taking a different approach to the problem. And
funny how that works, right?
And I think you've got to kind of marry the two to have a very successful security architecture and security in your organization, security program. You have to marry those two, and I often see that left out. I think that's why a lot of us are really down on threat intelligence of any kind, because of the services that are out there, because a lot of vendors are providing great services in those areas, don't get me wrong. But it's the way people use it that's wrong, and it works to not decrease their risk because they have to put some level of effort into that program, think about the problem differently, think about how it works in their organization, maybe have some user kind of awareness training around that in order to maximize the benefits. And that's kind of what I
and then and we've had some people even on this program in the last year talking about user awareness and user training and looking at some of those things, and I'm excited to start seeing people pay attention to it, right? I mean, we just got done talking about category design. Designing the user experience is really important. Well, just saying, hey, I put up a PowerPoint, and I tell people what to do, or I play whack-a-mole, and every time they screw up, I whack them in the head and tell them that's not training, folks. That's not changing their behaviors. But then we see it go the other way. Well, we gamify everything. Really? Like, I get it. I like to have a good time. I'm serious for like 10 minutes at a stretch, and then I got to take a break. So I get it. But at the same time, what you're pointing out, and I really like it. In fact, you give me an idea to go write about some of this, is that, when you're de-risking that risk, it's the risk of working with you. It's the risk of taking action. You're going to somebody right now that is so busy, they don't have time. Think about it right now. How many meetings, right? If you're listening to us, how many meetings did you have today? Or if it's a weekend and you're listening, hopefully you didn't have any, but you might have. How many emails did you respond to? How much time do you have to stop and to think about something? And then pause for a second and realize that you're going to somebody else who's in a very similar situation to you. They've got things they've got to get done on a time schedule. They don't have enough budget. They don't have enough resources. Paul, I don't know if you and I have talked about this, but every now and then I'll throw it out on Twitter. There'll be like a Fast Company article on the top job shortages. You know what? It's never security. We don't have enough truck drivers. We don't have enough hairdressers. We don't have enough something else. But everybody's got a shortage. Everybody's got a shortage. And so if you start to understand that, then when we come to them and we want them to take an action to buy our product, to do something, it's working against competing resources, whether it's time, it's their reputation, it's the money, it's whatever. And yeah, sometimes the answer is I don't have to buy more tools. I can just shift up the way we're doing something, or I can meet their needs in a different way. P.S. Do you know what they are? Because if you don't, those are the questions to ask. And that's where we end up spending a lot of our time as we look at a lot of these things. And I think that's the thing, right? It's you can take a look at it, and from a startup perspective, we'll keep looking at this. But what I wanted to do is just point out that from a business perspective, from an innovation perspective, if you're on that security leader side where you're saying, I want more innovation, cool. You need. I think you should go for it. I love it. But understand that that's taking a risk. So what's your tolerance and your temperance for risk? And then what steps can you take to de-risk that? Now, here's the beauty of it. We're good at a lot of this stuff instinctively. When you start to understand those risks, you can rank them. You can prioritize them. You can understand the ones that are important to certain people. There's some stuff you can do to de-risk it. There's some stuff that you can't do. You start to realize things, too, like, gosh, if people tell their stories. In fact, I'll leave it with this. I've always been amazed. Right, and you and I have done this a lot, and you've had some other really good guests on the programs across the platform talking about communication and talking about stories. Now, I appreciate when you say, what are the elements of a story? And somebody says a beginning, a middle, and an end. The problem with that is nobody knows what that means. We heard it someplace, and so we get excited about it, right? Or somebody will say, well, it's pathos, it's ethos, it's logos. Again, right. Here's what it is, right? It's characters, it's conflict, it's resolution. You have characters, they have emotions, they have situations. It's not just that, Charlie over there is a system administrator. Does he have kids? Does he have a wife? Is he missing soccer practice? Does he like to do jujitsu, or is he missing it? Does he how much stress is he under? Is he getting paid 9 to 5, but he's working from 6 to 6? And so there's a lot of stuff there that we can start talking about that we strip away. Yeah. We're so quick to strip away that emotion. And then there's a conflict. It's always like, well, here is Charlie. He's a system administrator, and he bought our product, and now everything's awesome, and he's great, and we're great, and you should buy our product too. Really, he didn't agonize over it at all. He didn't compare you to other people. He didn't do any sort of proof of concept. He didn't wonder if it was going to work or not. He didn't delay. Really? And then the resolution. It's all roses, no thorns at all. That's interesting. What you start finding is that when you tell real stories, and by the way, this works in the enterprise as well. When you tell real stories, somebody, this is Paul. Paul was nervous about this. He didn't know what it was going to be like the first time he called the security desk, but he called anyway. And you know what? He was really blown up. Tell me in your own words, Paul. And and you're like, well, actually, they were really polite. I didn't know what to expect. They're really polite. They helped me. I got my new laptop, whatever else. They explained this problem. I did this. And suddenly somebody else listening is going, well, I had those same questions. I was wondering how that was going to be, but I get it now. Okay, I'm good. And you're de-risking it for the next person to take action. So storytelling is definitely going to come into play. Does it take time to get it right? Yeah. Does it pay off? Well, yeah. Less risk is good. So just keep in mind, we're in the business of security, which is to protect ourselves against the unwarranted risks. Sometimes you can de-risk the risk of working with the security team.
Yeah, and I still think, Michael, we have this communications problem in security, and I still think it's somewhat unique to security in the way that it plays out, where people just rush towards a solution, and when the solution's not something they can go buy off the shelf, if part of that solution is working with other teams, with truly understanding the problem, if it stems from not being able to convince management to do certain things that you believe is true, You look for something you can just go buy or get off the shelf, and you want the magic easy security button. And that doesn't exist. And a lot of the problems, I think, in security just really stem from that communications problem. And I think it's something I think it's gotten better. I think you and I have made it better because more people have said, I love the message, and I incorporate that in my job today. And we're helping with that problem, but it still very much exists today.
Well, that then too, those of you listening and inclined for feedback, if you've got some specific challenges around how to communicate some of these things, I don't know where we'll put it, but Paul and I'll figure it out. I love whiteboarding and stuff. I put some new whiteboards up. I'll start taking some of these things down. There's some things that we're looking at in terms of my business and things that we can do in terms of this program that we're happy to help people with it. I think you're right. I think it's a communication. I think it's a mindset thing too. Like a lot of times, right? Like people, I don't know if I've done this in a while, but right, straight talk starts with value, or what I'll say now is it starts with a value proposition. You have to be able to say, what problem are we trying to solve? What value do we create when we solve that problem? And what's the impact of that solution? Now, impact's a force multiplier. It could be positive. It could be negative. It could be neutral. By the way, if it's neutral, that sucks, right? It's milk toast. Nobody wants that. If it's positive, that means, hey, if I solve this problem, I'm actually going to benefit everybody this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. Isn't that awesome? Yeah, that's totally awesome. It might undo all this other stuff. Yeah, not as awesome. And so, no, I think you're right. I think it's a communication thing. I think it's a mindset thing. And I think some of that too is executive and boards right now, like they're new to security. Well, what do we see when somebody they first gig, they get it? What are we going to do? We got to do something. And so we fall prey to that. By the way, then sometimes what you got to say is, yeah, you know what we got to do? We got to do the right stuff, which means we got to go understand what needs to get protected, where and how we're going to protect it. And let's go do what works for our organization to protect that. Okay, but I need it done last week. Well, that's not going to happen, but we're going to move at the right pace or whatever. So we're getting there. We're getting there, and I'm excited about it. And I think as this program continues, we're going to continue to emphasize innovation, the good solutions, the things that are getting people excited. And that's why we talk about people's funding and their funding rounds. I mean, it's a big deal to get a seed round. It's a bigger deal to get an A round. It's a bigger deal to get a B round. We're going to talk about acquisitions. We're going to talk about exits. We're going to talk about thinking on that. And we're seeing more and more on the buy side, the traditional buy side, but we're seeing a lot more companies now set up funds. There's another one today we're going to talk about. And we're starting to see some of the funds specifically say, we're going to invest in people that will help us do security. We're going to help us, but they'll say security, they'll say privacy, they'll say protect our information, protect our customers. Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunity here, and we're going to keep exploring it as we go. So it's exciting. I'm excited.
With that, we're going to take a short break now, Michael. We're going to dig into the startup articles and discussion and startup and security notes of interest. How about that?